Well, hello everyone. I'm back, and this time with hot news from the Astro Research Department, because this turns out to be a summer quite unlikely other summers as usual. Nothing ever repeats itself, although we seem to be going and walking in the same patterns as usual. But this summer, we know, at least some of us who has gone into the world of astrology and paid a little bit attention to what's going on, we know that there's going to be some interesting retrogrades, some pretty interesting eclipses, and a lot of action actually happening, which is perfect when we think of breaking patterns, because that's what retrogrades do. All right, let's go into my beautiful PowerPoint, which yes, this is the Mars and Venus glyph. I'm sure you've all seen it. Let's see if I can get this big. How do you do that? There we go. Yeah. So, first of all, I just want to do a little promo, because I never do that, and I thought it was time that I did. We're going to have a little, some of you might know that I work for the New Paradigm Astrology community, and we have as a goal to teach people proper evolutionary astrology as a cooperative. We want to go more in depth, and especially for these very juicy Mars-Venus aspects. A lot of people struggle a lot with relationships in their own lives, and it is difficult. We have a saying, there's like this African proverb. There was a guy with a Libra ascendant who once told me that there was this African proverb that says, "I relate, therefore I am." Now, the man was unknowingly a Libra ascendant, and I thought it was beautiful that it came from his lips. And this definition problem, this defining by others and this being defined by others, is sometimes the cause of great stress. Actually, it's the cause of the greatest stress that we go through. And the biggest advantage in astrology, of course, is the mirroring of not just yourself, but also others. And it's something that I frequently hear when I talk to people, is that, yes, I understand now why I feel so annoyed around this person. This person has Saturn conjunct my Mars. I just want to spank her. Or now I know why I can't breathe when I'm with this person, because Pluto is opposing my Sun, etc., and so forth. But at least you get an idea that, learning to decipher these particular synastrical challenges, and what is Mars, what is Venus, what is intimacy, sexuality, and all things juicy. We will have 8-week summer school winter school for the Australians, of course, on this particular hot eclipse season. And there's going to be a free webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So, yes, now commercial over. And this is the juicy aspects of today. I thought I'd just show you, because we start this whole period of Mars going retrograde, and then it's going retrograde. We have these 3 retrogrades coming in fast. And on top of that, we have a couple of eclipses in late July and beginning of August. And it starts actually today. I think, it started probably when Mars entered Aquarius, the 17th or 18th of May, at the same time as Uranus went into Taurus. And we had this kind of turning of a page. There is this feeling of a change in the air. And it's a very awkward energy. Mars in Aquarius, it's very erratic as anything Aquarian. It's very highly energized on a mental level, solving problems pretty quickly. And that can be good, and it can be challenging. But I reckon this particular date, actually today, with the summer solstice and everything, it's a powerful solstice chart. If you look at that, the moon is in Libra, the sun is in Cancer, and Mars and Venus are opposing each other on the nodal axis. And of course, it relates differently to each and one of us. But this is just a chart for the whole season, actually, for the next quarter. And with this moon in Libra, according to EA principles, the moon represents something old, something that we tend to want to take to the next level. I see the signs as spirals. They start on the very subconscious level. When you just have them, that's what we call the different evolutionary levels. When it's completely subconscious, it's just powers that drives us without us knowing what drives us and motivates our actions and habits and desires. And when Libra is on that particular level, it can turn out to be a kind of a people pleaser energy, very much into just mirroring the other's needs. So it's that famous getting lost in others, that famous losing yourself in relationships. The sun in Cancer, however, is a completely different part of the zodiac. It relates to a completely different part of human development. It relates to that part which is highly attuned to itself. If you met healthy Cancerians, if you have met people with healthy Cancer energy, you will see they are extremely loyal to themselves. They are thoroughly listening in on what they want to do and what they don't want to do. This is the beginning of the second quadrant in the natural zodiac. The first quadrant begins with Aries, where the seed of individuality is born. And chapter 2 of that development starts in Cancer, where the identity is being formed. So very often you will find people with a lot of Cancer planets that says, I don't feel like that. I don't know if I want to do that. They take the time to digest and feel if that is something that they want to be a part of or not. And it's a completely different energy than Libra, which is the beginning of the third quadrant. And for those of you who read Jeffrey Wolf Green, you know that's also the beginning of the socializing process, when we start that difficult process of me that turns to we, when we become one. That is such a difficult part of human development, because we fought so hard to keep ourselves as us. And looking at Earth today, it's not a given that you are given the right to be who you inwardly feel you are. And that's when the individualizing processes begins, to find out who are you, what is it that drives you, what is your motivating drive, what is your soul's desire. What is your dharma? Why are you here? And what are your gifts? And understanding that basic self-value, that basic self-worth is part of the healing that I anticipate for this coming cycle with Mars and Venus. And it's very exciting, I think, because I see that, why do people come to therapy, for instance? And it's because of that basic sense of self at one point during our development has been violated in one way or another. It can be in a little way through for instance, something as simple and obvious as the values of our society, which conditions a woman to be like this and a man to be like that. That could be a violation. And we see this today with, I recently joined the Pride Parade, and I was so happy to see all the young people there. There was this very young guy there. It was so special to see him. He was dead serious, and he had this poster around his neck. He was wearing a tie and no shirt and cool glasses, and he had dyed his hair white. And he was looking so serious, and he says, transgender youth have the right to be met by the medical community. And that's exactly, how far in the development of individuation we have come in our society today. But it doesn't mean that the wounds of the past haven't been inflicted upon us in one way or another. There can be bigger traumas happening to the sense of self, which is more obvious, like a violation that is like rape or abuse, abandonment, loss, whatever it is that sort of deflated that sense of self. Whenever, let's say you grew up in an environment where one of your parents were alcoholics. Now, just the fact that somebody chooses a bottle before you is a clear indication that you're not worth enough for that person to be happy. Your presence, your love, your connection with that person is not there's no connection, right? It's not helping. You are not important enough. And if we experience this as children, it devaluates our sense of self. And it's that total lack of empathic awareness in our society that causes this. People are treated as objects. We objectify each other more than we know, more than we are aware of, even if we are very conscious of ourselves. We objectify each other. And I often hear this through women who says, oh, this is typical men, they always do this. And men who says, oh, fucking women, they always do this. And when the shit hits the fan, these shadows, they really emerge. And I think that way of objectifying somebody, like for instance, when you enter into a new relationship, immediately the comparison to the other relationship happens. If you are like me, who are born with Pluto in Libra and can consider themselves a serial monogamist, I've had some pretty distinct and several relationships in my life. And I remember briefly talking to a friend of mine last year, and he said he was so completely honest about a few things that sort of opened my eyes to this objectifying of people. And one thing that he said, you know, I'm not your ex. And I'm like, I know that, you know, like it was his previous experience of being compared to somebody who had like, typical man, you always do like this, la 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 la. So he had been abused and held up to a history that was not his doing. He had never done nothing to these previous lovers that he had, and he shouldn't be held responsible for what their previous lover had done to them. And it's a good point, you know, none of us are another one. We are all unique in our own being. And it is that complete erasing of the past that is our greatest soul yearning, because we see that our patterns and habits and experiences from the past are too much defining us. They are too much inspiring our actions and leading to a repetition of a pattern, also known as karma. And it prevents us from reaching that dharmic point where you really feel you're in flow with your soul's intention. Like now it's flowing. It might be a Neptunian idea that everything will flow without resistance. Is there such a thing? Do we have to be completely enlightened to reach that stage? What is flow anyway? No, there will always be, you have to apply conscious will. That is always the same. You have to apply discipline. You have to apply effort. So nothing comes without effort. But it is that thing that makes you stay in a situation because you know it's true. You always come back to love. That's dharma. I have that thing with astrology. I always come back to it and I keep wondering, fucking astrology. I tried to get rid of it a couple of times, you know. It's a difficult work, you know. I'm very meticulous with the way that I approach clients, and I want to, I'm careful with my words. I'm careful with the responsibility. And it is a funny world, the world of astrology. It's very hyper-commerce in some ways, and it's very commercialized, especially today in the age of internet. You see so much silliness in the world of astrology, a lot of fear mongering, like, oh, no, everything is retrograde, go hide. But at the same time, it keeps boomeranging back into my life, and I love it so much. I was so looking forward to this lecture because I get to talk about Venus and Mars and stuff, and my passion just, it's like a fire in my soul, and it's undeniable. I have to follow that bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say, and it's not easy. It's been the greatest thing, the most difficult thing that I've done. But it's still my love. It is as if I was married to my true love. I would go through hell with that person. The moment you're not married to your true love and you see that, ugh, I don't bother to go through hell with this person, you won't go through hell with that person, right? So it all relates to individuation. It all relates, it comes back over and over again. Who are you? In synastry, in astrology, people normally come, so do you think I should date a Taurus? And I'm like, I don't know. Why do you ask me? I don't generalize. So I can be pretty tough on these people. And it's not because I'm mean. It's just because I get this question so many times. And I'm yearning to teach people a better way of understanding synastry and relationships and astrology. Astrology is not one sun sign and that's it. No, you have to look deeper. First of all, you have to figure out, what planet are you on? Are you consensus? Are you individuating? Are you aspiring to something spiritual? Because that is most important in any synastry, is that you get people who kind of get your vibe in a way, who is, you know, on the same levels. And what are these evolutionary levels? It's activation of chakras. It's root, hara, solar plexus, heart, and then throat, and then third eye, and then kapoof, you go back to God through the crown chakra. And not all are awakened up here. It will be boring conversations if you're with somebody whose synastry is magnificent. You know, you connect on the roots, but there's nothing happening here. That would be very boring. But the astrologer said it was a perfect synastry. So, you know, it's not that easy. So my first inspiration when I ask people, so how do you want to figure out who you know can work with or function with or create something with? Well, then you have to look at your own chart and you have to go through that particular exercise. I did that last year and it's been so much fun. You have no idea, because I have my polarities in my charts. I have like my Venus in Capricorn, I have my Sun, Jupiter in Aquarius and Mercury in Pisces, and I Capricorn ascendant and empty Cancer, Leo, Virgo, nothing happening over there. So like naturally I polarized with these people. So I was like going into my little, you know, I had this little thing on the app on my phone, and I'm like, so maybe if this person was born around June in 1971, that would be like, because then the lunar nodes are on my sun and we'll have, oh yeah, like that will be like this and that. And lo and behold, I actually met just 3 days after a guy who was born there, and he was super yummy. But of course, you know, like nothing happened, but it was such a fun thing and I learned something. And then I was like, I withdrew a little bit from that. And then I thought, no, maybe, you know, it's all about fine tuning. And the best thing is that you learn about you. What makes you feel complete? What makes you feel whole? What makes you feel at home with somebody where you can relax and just be completely yourself? And you get each other. You give each other space when that's needed, and you connect when that is needed. And there's this kind of communication that works. Now, all these three things are difficult: giving each other space when that needed, having the right kind of intimacy when that is needed, and probably most importantly, which is the focus of a lot of relationship therapists, communication. But communication is a lot. We talk through our bodies, we talk through our actions, we talk through our words, we talk in many levels through our emotions. So, but just having a sense of connection with somebody, what type of connection is that you need in your life? If it's friends, lovers, colleagues, whatever, study synastries, figure out what triggers you, where's your weak spot in your chart, what is it that really makes you feel uncomfortable with some people. Like, why is it so, you know? I've had to go through, you know, like synastry with other people has been one of the most learning experiences for me in my personal life. Like, I tend to pull in a lot of Taurus women in my life, and I have Mars in Taurus. And it's like so funny, because you shouldn't think that, you know, normally we shy away from relationships where somebody's sun is conjunct your Mars and square my sun. You know, I have a strong Mars. But I really actually like these people quite a lot, you know. There's no there's no, it's like they energize me. We give each other energy. It's inspiration. It's creativity. It's all these good things that you want in your life. But of course, it depends on that individual person's capacity to express themselves in a positive and harmonious way. And of course, there has to be a little bit of confrontation whenever Mars is a part of a hot synastry. And if that's okay, then that's going to be a great relationship. So there's no one rule. You know, it depends so much. I like Mars people. I really like them. But I also like people who are more quiet. They do something to me as well. You can't have it all in one person. The most important thing is that you understand your needs and that you find it within yourself enough self-confidence and courage to express them when you are with people. And that's not easy, especially when we look at this transit. What's the zeitgeist of this particular transit? I don't know if I mentioned it to the EA Zoom group before, but I've been quite concerned with this South Node in Aquarius. Well, it's pretty soon over, but it's in the final stages, and any nodal transit is always super interesting at its final stages. It's about to finish off the process of its 18 months stay in a particular sign, which is the length of time the nodal axis goes backward through a sign. And each eclipse is a new chapter of that process, right? So we're waiting for the final eclipses on that nodal axis, which started in May 2012. No, sorry, that's a little far. I'm still stuck in 2012. Maybe I want to go back to 2012. All right, that was last year, May last year. And from an evolutionary point of view, and this is something, if you're familiar with the works of Mark Jones, for instance, you know that there's a certain correlation to trauma or abrupt changes with the South Node in Aquarius. You often find this in a chart where there's been a certain coldness growing up, like detachment from emotions, emotional detachment. That is, said in other words, lack of empathic awareness from either parents, school systems, friends, whatever. And it can lead to a certain kind of outsider complex, loneliness, for instance. Isolation is part of that Uranus energy. If you look at Uranus, the ruler of the South Node, is in the sign of Taurus, the body. And it squares this nodal axis. So it's very, very important time for us if we want to breathe through whatever it is we are disconnected from on our inner levels. And with Mars here, we'll see an intensification of that particular process. Now it can lead to very heightened states of both awareness and of energy. Like you can't sleep because you get some thoughts in your head and it's just hyper driving you through the night, and you're like a little sleeping above the bed. Uranus relates to the nervous system. Any trauma, any violation, anything that scares you, anxieties, worries, it's an activation of the nervous system. And we say that from a physiological point of view, Mars rules the adrenals. It's that switch on button in the body, like, oh, come on, time to go. Venus rules the kidneys, and that's the balancing part of the body. That's the finding the balance in liquids and salts and purifying the body again, purifying the waters of the body, filtering. And for the Chinese, the kidneys are the storehouse of the qi itself. When you have kidney fatigue, you will be pretty, you will have some black rings under your eyes and feel pretty darn exhausted, especially if your adrenals are running crazy all night long and you're sleeping, but your brain is not sleeping. It's like you are half awake while you're sleeping. So there's a deep physiological aspect to life that affects our nervous system and affects our relationship. How many times have you said things or done things that were premeditated because you just thought that was the right thing to do? And a lot of things, you know, happens to us where we put ourselves in situations where we are not listening to our intuition due to that particular aspect. There's another desire going on. I just want this. I'm not thinking. I just think I want this. It seems right, so it must be right. And that's Mars. And Mars will be very strong. Anything that touches the nodal axis will be magnified in its influence on Earth, because the nodal axis pertains to the magnetic field of Earth itself. It's as if it's having like a straw out to these energies and just sucking them in, capturing them in the aura of not just the Earth. You share aura with Earth. There is no separation. And size really doesn't matter in certain cases. So, you know, there's that kind of feeling that these two planetary bodies, Mars and Venus, which relates to that quality of, okay, can you stay in yourself and relate to others? Or do you have some traumas that makes it impossible to relate to others? There's been some interesting experiences. I'm extremely sensitive. You know, like for me, it's like energy is like, it's a whole world that is like, it's hard to put into words. Of course, I would spend 3 hours explaining how, and a lot of you probably have it, maybe experience it similarly, but I work with healing. So part of being a healer is also being extremely trained. You train in sensing energy. What is this energy? What is that energy? It's like, because we live in a world of energy. And I tend to kind of like, when I go into a meeting, and I had this meeting, like there's a friend in my environment, and he's a very Uranian kind of guy, and he's very closed off in his feelings, and he's very isolated, and it's like very little energy coming out, but there's like a whole lot coming out anyway. Like he's not expressing it, but it's being expressed in other ways through his energy. And it's like, I can't relax around this person. It's like I freeze. And I think, you know, why do I do that? Because I normally never freeze around people. But it's been such an interesting observation, because it made me realize the awkwardness of the insecurity, the freezing capacity we human beings have in our relationships. Like, no, I can't write that. No, or I don't think I want to express that. Like when the filtering processes, when our expressive qualities are being too much inhibited and we don't let anything out, it leads to other people being insecure around us. And it can lead also to deep relationship problems, because there's no connection. There's lack of certain emotional connection. Being, you know, aware of who is it that I mean, how do you feel? I have another friend who's extremely expressive in his emotions. He's like a fifth house Capricorn with ascendant in Leo. And he's like Mars Sun opposition, actually retrograde Mars actually. And he's like completely transparent in his feelings. And it's so nice, because I know where I have him. I was like, oh, you're in a good mood today. Okay, cool. You're in a bad mood today. Great. See that too. You know, like it's making me very safe. It's like there's true friendship. It's like we are close. We can share everything. This is the feeling I get. And that is the nature of isolation, of loneliness. Actually, per definition, it's not necessarily that we are alone, because we're all alone. We just have to learn to live with that. But being without connection is loneliness. When you're unable to express a vital part of your being due to some disturbances in your development, and it's been left untreated or unexposed, even to yourself, then there will be these touching in, touching out, this back and forth, like now we're close, and oh, and now we're distant. Okay, so now we're distant again, and now we're close, and whoops, now we're distant again. And this is a particular problem that relates to the South Node in Aquarius. So if you're going through some experiences in your own life where you have some struggles with expressing certain aspects of yourself, it might be this particular aspect that is putting this, highlighting this particular need that any human being has to overcome those fears of being who you are. Because expressing your emotions is like saying, I don't like you, or I really like you. It has a consequence. If you pretend that you like everyone, like Moon Libra can do that. Like I like everyone. I never get angry. Like you get around. You're like a chameleon. You can just easily survive in a variety of situations. But if you react and you say, "Shit, I really don't like that person," and it's not very popular to be angry these days, but that's setting boundaries for yourself. I don't want nothing to do with this person. This person doesn't interest me. I don't have time for that. You know what? I'm sorry if you hear the noise in the background. It's my teenager son who's having some party with some friends on the computer, which is their generation's way of having fun. And so I told him to keep it down, but he doesn't seem to remember. Anyways, so that's the Mars in Aquarius energy that we are now, that we will see through, particularly through the total lunar eclipse, the 27th. This Mars will come forth in all its power. Then the moon will be there as well. And it's a total lunar eclipse. So we're building up to this energy. And with every astrological aspect, the buildup is always the most interesting. But right now we have this opposition phase between Mars and Venus. And yeah, depending on where it falls in your chart or where you are in your life, it will be affecting your relationships in one way or another. It can also be the relationship you have to yourself, of course, which is part of the Venusian energy. Let's move. I would just want to add some words on the retrogradations. Retrograde planets are difficult to understand. I remember I bought my first book on retrogrades, Martin Schulman. The only book there was to find in this particular store in Oslo, where I found my first astrology books 25 years ago. And I have Venus retrograde. So for me, it's like, oh, I need this book. This is the book that I need. And it never really gave me very much, I think I probably forgot everything that was in that book. It never led to me understanding nothing of my own Venus retrograde, that's for sure. And, I still don't understand it. Can somebody please explain it to me? I'd love that. But yeah, and then finally I managed to dig out Jeffrey Wolf Green, the Pluto book, volume 1 and 2, and that was like a kick in the face. And it was the real deal. This man has thoroughly tuned into some deep layers of what it means to be a soul and what it means to be human. Now, of course, it's a work in progress. We are all contributing to the development of evolutionary astrology, each and every one of us who are working in the field, and it's been developing. But that's the seed of the Pluto understanding. In my opinion, of course, there are other sources as well if you go into esoteric astrology, but let's not go there. The retrogradation is an internalizing process. It's like the planets, it's being pulled into itself. People tend to see me, for instance, as being extremely extrovert. I have a lot of masculine planets in my chart. I can be very open and very extrovert. I'm hyper social at times. But I love, more than anything, this deep internal process of churning around. Like I can walk inside my house all day long, thinking, writing. It's my favorite spot, actually. And it's amazing. I just like, wow, what is going on in my head? It's just ongoing all the time. I'm figuring out things and it's like, I love it. But it's very much a part of the Venus retrograde. It's understanding and internalizing and rebelling against the social standards in life, values in life. So there's this kind of introversion that has to happen. Why? Because of a need for a karmic release. The theory is that any planet that is retrograde is not retrograde, especially natally, by coincidence. It's retrograde with purpose. There's a purpose behind the retrograde planets. There's a purpose behind all your chart. So there has to be a purpose why certain planets in your chart are retrograde or why they are not. But when there's this powerful karmic release, it might feel extremely intense and powerful and very often quite difficult. There might be this resistance to dealing with the issues because they feel the problem seems insurmountable. It's like, I can't do nothing with it. It keeps repeating itself compulsory over and over and over again. I have to go through the same old 1,000 billion times. When is the salvation coming? Where's Jesus when you need him? I want to have my own personal Jesus to heal this Venus retrograde thing. But what you do is you go into the temple and you discover yourself. In the Temple of Delphi, it says, know thyself. And it's that key of self-realization. That's why they call it self-realization. And it's a tough process for most people. You can see a retrograde planet as a very individualizing planet, even for a consensus chart. Even a consensus Venus retrograde or Mars retrograde will be a little off, in terms of a Mercury retrograde, like they will be a little off compared to the collective vibe. When they appear in the charts of individualizing people, which is most of us, I include myself in that, then it's like I'm digging deep. I need to find me and my values and my drives and my motivations and my thoughts, whatever it is. And it's particular to the Venus, Mars, Mercury, which is flanking Earth, and it's bridging Earth to Sun. We have Mars on the outside, Venus, Mercury on the inside, and then Sun, and then Earth, and then Moon. This is the core, right? And these are that's the primaries, that's the personal planet. And they define what underwear you wear. You don't wear wool. You wear something nice and yummy on the inside, like something, whoever you want to have close in your life, they have to be like silk underwear. You don't want to wear wool. Something itchy, something annoying. So it's very important, this defining yourself. And this process of self-definition is accelerated tenfold when a planet is retrograde, especially natally. We all get a little bit of that when anything is going retrograde in the skies. We get that chance. It's time now to halt the natural expression of that planetary principle and think before you act. That's why we say you shouldn't sign contracts when Mercury is retrograde. Think before you act. Well, I bought my phone and my computer when I had okay. Well, I'm glad you're laughing. I reckon myself to be a stand-up astrologer. That's what I want to be when I grow up. Stand-up astrology. That's much more fun. Anyway, when you know and you discover yourself, there's another process happening. You have to stay loyal to it. You have to find the courage to express that particular part. So it's little wonder it takes time when you understand, the fears that we experience as real. I normally say that fear is very convincing. Fear is part of that, the devil's advocate on the inside that said, the teaser that said, don't go there, don't do that, don't. We don't know whether it's a good kind of fear that is trying to prevent us from doing something stupid, or if it's just a stupid kind of fear that's preventing us to do something real. And it's like, which is difficult. So there has to be a real capacity for discernment. And that is difficult when we are listening too much to other people. I often say that not all advice is good advice. This is my latest mantra. I also say that if you ask 3 people, you get 3 different answers. Don't ask too much other people what they think about your choices, you will become even more insecure, right? The self-empowerment that is needed for those who are individualizing is actually lessening the dependency on other people's opinions. It doesn't mean you have to walk all the path alone, but you have to choose your inspiration wisely. And be careful when you walk around in the world of astrology. Even I get scared sometimes when I read some of the most crazy fatalistic shit out there. It's like, oh, that's crazy, man. You know, like, I don't want to know worst case scenario. I don't care. It's about creation. And I'm not saying I'm completely Pollyanna or like I only want to go for good things. It's nice to know that you will be hit by a car before you are actually hit by the car. And you can be a little cautious in that period. But understanding that there's a difference between being awake and aware and being aware and completely scared to death is a real big difference. That's why the heart is the first that opens after the solar plexus. The solar plexus, the root, and the hara are all pertaining to our basic ego needs. Now the heart starts. And the heart is that quality of love. When we open up to wisdom and we open up to seeing things as they are, we need to have love with us. We can't be in the world without love. It will be a terrifying place. It will be terrifying. It's the only place we can rest is in love, especially when we have knowledge. Knowledge without love is nothing. It's nothing. It's not worth nothing. It's just knowledge. And it can scare people to death. And that's why it works. All this brainwashing and all this commercializing and all this stuff that is going on today. It works. So what we discovered during the retrogrades is what has happened to the self, the development of that healthy sense of self during many lifetimes. Things keep popping back. I have no count on how many people I just met during a retrograde. It's like, yeah, don't tell me Mercury is retrograde. And it's like this kind of like, this kind of meeting. And isn't it fun how you meet people? You never thought you would meet them, and then you meet them and you have a great meaningful experience. And people keep thinking, I never meet anyone. Nobody fun out there. But it's like, yeah, well, first of all, you have to go out and you have to be open to it. And there's a time for everything. But then again, when you open up to it, you will also see that, oh my goodness, it like we are everywhere and we connect with each other in miraculous way. If I had just arrived 3 minutes later, I wouldn't have bumped into that person. It's beautiful. It's completely beautiful. And the way that karma works is also beautiful. There's lots of positive karma out there as well. You've done lots of great things in your previous lifetimes, and it's important to also remind yourself of that when we go into such a phase of like karmic release. Like, oh, karma. People are afraid of karma because they believe deep within themselves that they did something wrong. That guilt problem that is riding the planet like a disease is making us fear life, like whatever comes around goes around, right? You're a great human being. Consider yourself a great human being with capacity to love. Of course you make mistakes. That's part of the equation. That's part of the making of the diamond. We all make mistakes, but you're a great human being. And if that love is there, that unconditional love, first to the self and then to the world, if that is there, then knowledge is not a problem. Experience is not a problem. You start trusting life again, that it's innately good. And that's difficult because a lot of bad shit happened. I don't know nobody who didn't go through crap in their lives, mostly because of the ignorance and lack of compassion and lack of empathy that they experienced in a world that's continuously treating people as objects. So little wonder we're a little scared. Yeah. So Mars will go retro soon. We're soon. I'm like, I have no sense of time, but it's actually in 5 days. And it's on that degree-ish right now, you know, like it's this 9-degree Aquarius. If you have anything on 9 degrees Aquarius, you're the lead singer this year. You're going to do the solo. Yeah, it's an amazing time, you know, like that. There was a lecture on Mars. Who was it? Kristen Fontana, who did a lecture on Mars. She's also a Mars fan like me. Because I think, you know, we tend to judge. The problem with going into astrology is that it needs to be generalized, and then we shouldn't project on it. So it's kind of difficult because we see that Mars is it's like a dog that needs a little taming, to be quite honest. It's an energy within us that we all have. And it can go completely crazy from time to time because we can lose control of ourselves. I know when I get myself into a fears, you know, passion, it's hard to sort of stop it. You know, once you accelerate the car, you can't just take it down to the first gear again. You will break the whole engine. So it's kind of like once you get excited about something, it's hard to regulate it down again. But we need to get excited about something. It's not dangerous, but it can be. Especially if we lose contact with our ground control, if we take off, right? If we do it through fear. In martial arts, they have this principle that who becomes afraid first is the one who lost, because then you have no control no more. Fear is the problem, not Mars. Now, of course, the adrenals, they have this cortisol, that can also affect adrenaline. It's survival. It's the instinct of survival. But if you can hold a little space for fear and recognize fear when it happens, it's uncomfortable as, oh my God, people who go through massive PTSDs, they know exactly how uncomfortable fear is, because it's like it's poison from the inside of your body and you can't speak. You want to say something, but let's say you want to give a lecture and you think everybody here is going to think I'm a fool. That's not an invitation to flow. You're afraid people won't like you. That's when you go into fear, right? The fear is real then. You identify with the fear. Now remember, Mars is in Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of detachment. If you meet individuals with Mars in Aquarius, you will meet people who can be a little too detached sometimes. They're quite experimental. They don't always act on their basic instincts. They relax. It's like they're mental. They're more mentally polarized. They use their minds. And this is our opportunity now. Use the mind. Think before you act. Mars will go retrograde, right? Yes, think before you act. Understand your own reactions. Mars is extremely reactive, and that's a problem. It's just things come out before we even know that it happened. We do stuff and we completely dislocate from, I call it, we go into dreamland. We sleep while we're doing it. And then we wake up after and think, why did I do that? Why did I say that to that person? What happened? Where was I? And that's when you know you're disconnected. You're not there. It's like you zoom out and you're not there. So being in the body is very important in this time, being safely in the body. And this can also apply in the more intimate areas like sexuality. A lot of us carry a lot of fear around sexuality and a lot of shame around sexuality. Now,
10 minutes left.
Oh, right. Okay. So this kind of freedom that we are looking at for Mars is definitely something that is, you know, where we can express ourselves as we are. That takes courage, right? So this is what I wrote as little notes on Mars and Aquarius, learning to be free. So according to Jeffrey Wolf Green, Mars is acting on the soul's will to actualize its potential. And it's my way or the highway, right? And the retrograde motion shows a need to rethink these patterns. And for people who are born with Mars retrograde, it can often show that previous lifetimes where they've had been too impulsive, taken too many, risks, being too, too aggressive, for instance. The thing with Mars retrograde that you should pay attention to is that your body can be very on and off in terms of how much energy you have. Sleep. Take good care of your sleep patterns. That's the only thing that I think is, really like the only thing that can heal. Go into nature, hug a tree, talk to people if you feel they're suddenly disconnecting from you. And then I have to move quickly into, and then Mercury goes retrograde. I thought I'd just mention it. 26th of July, just before the eclipse. Hallelujah. And then Chiron, look at that, will go back into Pisces, and Uranus will go back into Aries, and Venus goes direct again November 16th in Libra. It goes from Scorpio to Libra, and Mars goes direct 27th of August back to Capricorn, the late degrees. Look, it's all late degrees. And it goes from these beginning degrees into the late degrees. It's like a whole, like 2018 is just like a whole revisiting and then going back. I call it the year of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's beautiful. I think it's super beautiful. I'm like, oh, it's so exciting. Now, Venus goes retrograde from 5th of October to 16th of November. And she does that exactly when Mars is coming back to that particular energy that he is on right now. So whatever you're in, it's not going to be, this will be a learning process. If you're in a new relationship or in an old relationship or whatever, whatever you want to be in a relationship, the learning process will be about that. And something will culminate around this Venus in Scorpio, which is a deep signature for intimacy. I want to get close to you. That's what Scorpio says. I want all of you. Take off your clothes. I want to see everything. And this Venus is definitely going into transforming values and learning about codependency. Scorpio is the sign of abandonment, loss, betrayal. And people who are born with Venus in Scorpio are often very, very internalized people who are always checking and scanning their environment to see if they're safe or not. And they can hook on to very strong individuals. There's a lot of psychological healing in these type of relationships. And there can be like this, I want to see if I'm safe with you. It can, of course, end up in some eternal cycling of being in a relationship where you become somebody's psychological mentor, or there's like ongoing psychological drama going on. But the retrograde motions is rebelling against these preset conditions. We will all be working on our own codependency issues in this time. And I think it's such a beautiful rhythm in it all. First, Mars goes retrograde, culminating in an eclipse where you are forced to express yourself with the sun in Leo over there. And then Mercury goes retrograde and is like, you start really thinking, what is it that I want to say? And then we start saying it. When Venus goes into the more intimate areas, that's when we really start working on that project intimacy. And there can only be healthy intimacy if we have the capacity to be free in ourselves. If I constantly weigh in or pry into others what I think they want to hear, I lose myself. I cannot express myself the way that I am if I'm planning ahead. Whatever comes from the heart, let it flow. And be safe after. Don't worry. If you lose it, it's not yours. And if it's true, it will come back. Intimacy scares the shit out of people, and I understand why. It's not easy. Not in this world where we are, again, back to that being objects to each other. So I think, we will all be dealing with this shadow material when Venus goes into Scorpio. And then again, the process will be completed once Uranus re-enters Taurus. It goes back to Aries and keeps working on that who are you really process. and Chiron goes back to Pisces and keep working on that victimization wound. And then, poof, 2019 and 2020, well, that's when the fun begins. All right, people. I made my points. My points. Many of them. Thank you for listening. And anything else, Linda? I guess my time is... I managed to keep time.
Thank you so much. Let's just see if anyone has a question. We can take one. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Any questions, anyone?
I completely fried their brains.
We've had a few.
This is Wendy.
Yeah.
No question. Just, I was laughing. You were making me laugh. All these things you were saying, backing off from astrology and all those things. I just was relating so much. So thank you.
Good, yeah. Well, that's good. Nice to hear. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, it is difficult to be yourself in a world that is not believing in astrology. It's not just that. It's a whole commercialized stuff as well, like I just want to help people. It's just easy. It's not, that's it. I've found help in astrology. I just want to share it. So all the other things.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sol. That was wonderful. Would you all
thank you.
Sol Jonassen, everyone. See you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ciao. Have a beautiful summer, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Ciao.